Hey guys, this is the story of Don Fury Studio. Hope you like it. 1992 was a breakout at the studio for some of the bands and for Wreckage Records and for the studio itself. We did a 5-song EP for Taste of Fear, Daryl Cahan's band after Citizen's arrest. We did 7-inch records for Growing Up Skipper, for Making of Americans Records, for Spark Marker, for Selfless Records, for Rejuvenate, Tommy Ratt's band, for Inner Spirit, for Outface, for Crisis, the label Walter Schreifel started with Revelation. Long Island had a scene that was starting up, and we did 7-inch for Scapegrace for Framework Records, one of the many Long Island bands that would start coming into the studio. We recorded a compilation, Sick But Slick, for Nawpost Records, started by John Franco, and we did sessions for Awkward Thought, No Win Situation, SFA, Yuppicide, and we mixed Huasipongo for that comp. We also did a couple of novelty singles for John Franco's dad, Ted, and they were hilarious. I can't leave that out. And we mixed the Italian band Equality for Cargo Records. I think the Quest for Certainty session was a breakout for Shelter the band, and especially for Ray Capo, the singer. On that session were Ray, Vic Takara, Kristen Tarante, and Eric Daly. And I think Shelter's music was really developed, and Ray, especially as a vocalist and a melodic vocalist, was very nicely developed. You know, Ray had come in and done the No Compromise EP with me in 1990 with Sammy and Porcell, and you could hear him stretching away from, Youth of Today style yelling and screaming and moving towards a melodic style of vocals. But on Quest for Certainty, he had really achieved it, and it was a really nice style, I thought. The writing, arranging, performing were all excellent on Quest for Certainty. And I thought Vic Takara's guitar playing was excellent, especially. His solos were manic and fantastic, and a really good contrast to Ray's melodic vocal. I would end up working with Vic on the 108 record, not that much long after, and I would end up doing a lot of work with Shelter after this. But I thought that Quest for Certainty was definitely the moment that their sound got shaped in the beginning years. 1992 was a breakout year for Wreckage Records, the label run by Pavlos Ioannidis and Amber Green in Soho, New York. Wreckage and I had done one record for SFA in 1990, and Wreckage would end up working with a lot of artists from ABC No Rio scene and also from the Long Island scene that was just getting started. We did some really cool sessions for Wreckage Records in 1992. We did the Fear and Loathing LP for Bad Trip, and Madball came back in to do an EP, Dropping Many Suckers. So that was really cool, having Freddie Madball and Agnostic Front back at the studio for a couple of days. Vinny Stigma was a blast, and the record turned out great. 1992 is definitely a breakout for Yuppicide, one of the bands from the ABC No Rio scene. We had recorded their LP Fear Love without a label, and when we were done with the recording, I introduced them to Wreckage Records, who liked the record and picked up the band. So Fear Love was put out on Wreckage Records in 1992. Also in 1992, Wreckage put the band back in for an EP, and that was the You've Been Warned EP. And we had a little conversation about that. Jesse Jones, the singer of the band, was very into theatrical production. And the band, Jesse, Steve Karp, Joe Keefe, and John Lynch, wanted to do a record where they stretched out some of the concepts of theater and punk rock and hardcore together. And Wreckage gave them a thumbs up. So they came in and did the EP, You've Been Warned, And it was one of the most phenomenal productions we've ever done. It sounds like movie music, basically, from a David Lynch movie, because actually that's probably what inspired some of the songs. It's one of my favorite productions, and it was really cool to do with the band. Yuppicide would come in for a couple more albums at the studio, and Rec Age and I would go on to do many, many fantastic records for the label over the years. Another band I think had a breakout year in 1992 at the studio was God Is My Co-Pilot. God Is My Co-Pilot was a no-wave gender punk band, and I had done a couple of EPs for them in 1991. In 1992, we did a bunch of EPs, How I Got Over for Ajax, Gender Is As Gender Does for Funky Mushroom, and On a Wing and a Prayer, which also came out on Funky Mushroom in 1991. We also did a 33-song LP, I Am Not This Body, for The Making of Americans, which was a label run by the band and Craig Flanagan. The band was Sharon Topper, Craig Flanagan, Alex Klein, Siobhan Duffy, Michael Evans, and Fly. And they would have guests coming in and doing spots, some of them John Zorn, Daryl Kahan on vocals, and Jad Fair. Sound checks for these sessions were crazy. There was at least 2 drummers involved, maybe percussion, bass guitar, maybe saxophone, maybe keyboard, maybe cello, and then at least 3 singers. And we were taking it all live, 100% live. And the singers were basically lined up next to me in the control room, and everybody else was in the studio or the drum bubble. And sound checks would sometimes take as long as 2 or 3 hours just to get everybody set up and mic checked. And then they would just blast through the takes. And it was like 1 or 2 takes maximum, usually 1. And then Craig and I would get back together and mix the record at a later date. God Is My Co-Pilot were definitely press favorites. And I remember them showing me their press binder. It was like 2 inches thick, and all the press was positive. I mean, they were just doing things that no other band was doing in New York City at that time, and they were darlings. By 1992, it was time for a format change at the studio. The 8-track format and the 16-track format were both wildly successful for the records that we were doing. In fact, the 16-track format could have gone on for a number of years more. But the bands were just going so fast that I had to keep up with the bands, and I knew I needed to get to a 24-track format. I just didn't know how to get there, because a used 2-inch machine like an Ampex or a Studer would have cost me between $20,000 and $30,000, and they're huge. I'm not even sure I could have gotten them down the staircase. So I really had a problem about how to get to a 24-track format. But luckily, 1992 was the year that the ADAT recorder debuted from Alesis. And I bought into the technology without ever seeing it, without ever trying it, and brought 3 machines in, because they were 8-channel machines and modular, and created a 24-track format from 3 ADAT machines and a new Allen & Heath GS3 24-channel inline console. Those 2 purchases and whatever else I did along with that set me up for the next 4 or 5 years to be able to at least catch up or tag along with some of the bigger studios in New York. And it was a game changer for the studio.